As the title and the thumbnail most likely of this video states, I'm going to attempt to make a case of why you should play Underworld Goddess in your Ishizu Tearlament deck. So in this match, this is a fairly high level match. We are playing Ishizu Tearlaments. Our opponent is going first playing Sprite. You'll see what variant they're on in just a second. The opponent starts off with a starter, into blue, into jet, search another starter, that's follow up for next turn. They're going to go into Gigantic here. And off Gigantic, they usually bring Swap Frog, but this opponent opts to bring Ibli. So then they link off the Ibli and the Gigantic, go into Elf. That triggers Ibli in the graveyard to come into my field. I'm going to attempt to DD Crow it because I don't want to be locked out of special summoning, obviously, except for Link monsters. The opponent has a Ghost Spell. So they have their deck kind of set up to resolve Ibli and give me the Ibli, which is kind of interesting. So, you know, we are going to get the Ibli now because the DD Crow will be negated by the Ghost Spell. So that means the Ibli will not be banished. And now we have the Ibli that we have to link off if we attempt to, or crash if we want to attempt to play. The opponent normal summons Effect Veiler, and it links off the Effect Veiler and the Sprite Jet to go into IP Masquerena. This should tell you one thing immediately, right? If the opponent is willing to use this for link material, they likely have more hand traps in hand, okay? So that's the first thing to consider. So if we look at this end board here, the opponent sets up an Elf Interruption for my turn, but there's nothing they can really bring back except for like a blue or a jet to search for follow-up engine during next turn. Okay, that's fine. IP Masquerena, that can link them into either a Unicorn to interrupt my play, or most likely Avermax. Okay, they have a face-down card here, that's likely an interruption, we don't know what it is, and then they probably have at least one other hand trap, that's why they use the Effect Veiler. So 4 things in total. Now, why would I need to play Underworld Goddess? Am I just salty about a specific scenario? No, not really. Because Sprite is still a viable deck, and going first it can be very, very strong. If the opponent opted to set up like Carrot and Red on top of this, they could have a very, very, very strong end board. But just any towers monsters you encounter in general. What I do here is switch Ibli to attack, attempt to go battle phase to bait out both of the interruptions here. And sure enough, it does. They go Sprite Elf to bring back blue. Blue is going to go ahead and search for a jet, I believe, on their side, and they're going to chain Masquerena to link off the IP and the Elf to go into Avermax. So IP resolves first, bringing Avermax untargetable and now indestructible like card effects thanks to IP being used as material, and the blue grabs them jet for follow-up. So we know they have starter and they have jet in hand, right? And then one mystery card, which, like we said, is likely a hand trap. So we have to still go battle phase and crash the Ibli. Now, what was the alternative play? Normal summon Kelbeck and then link off into Dark. Now that we forced the opponent to use up their interruptions, we could have stayed in main phase 1 and knock on to battle phase, right? Normal summon Kelbeck, go into Dark, like I said. Dark target the IP in the graveyard, and that links off the Nightmare Corruptor Ibli because we use it to summon Dark. And by bringing back the IP, we can then, you know, special summon Mudora, pitch Kelbeck, mill 5, likely put more bodies on field, but the opponent is stuck with this, right? And then, you know, depending on what we want to do, we can use the Dark, we can use the IP, we can use the Mudora, whatever we want, whatever else we bring to the field, and the Mech Knight Crusadia in order to go into Underworld Goddess. And that would easily out the Avermax, and then I don't know if it triggers the Avermax, I don't think it does, but I could be wrong. But we still have our battle phase, and we can easily just clear the opponent's board. Again, we know what they have in the Jet and the starter, and most likely off of these mills that we set up, we can put up enough interruptions to slow the opponent down, because once Tearlaments gets going, it's very hard for Sprite to stop it. Sprite's main strength is that it plays enough hand traps to slow Tearlaments down, and then you set up your board so that you can continually negate what Tearlaments wants to do. But once Tearlaments gets going, it's very hard for Sprite to overcome that. So instead, we have to crash the Ibli, and you know, it's not necessarily the end of the world because we evenly mash. Obviously, the opponent's going to keep the Avermax. Now, main phase 2, we attempt to go Terraforming. Sure enough, the opponent does have the Ash Blossom, so no Primeval Planet for us. And now we're going to be able to play in main phase 2, special summon Mudora by pitching the Kelbeck. Now, what do we get off Kelbeck? I make a misplay here, and I'll explain it in a second. But we do get 2 names in the Sharon and the Havness. I trigger Havness first, and then I thought it was asking me which materials I wanted to use. And I thought, you know, I was like, yeah, I want to use Sharon, but I didn't actually want to use Sharon's fusion effect. So I accidentally triggered both, which was a misplay, because I don't have enough materials in grave and on field in hand to make 2 fusion monsters. I can only make 1, either Mud Dragon or Kit Kalos. So that was a bit of a misplay. And the opponent here, let's see, they mill their red, and if they're playing Sprite with another engine, they're likely only playing 1 red and 1 carrot. So if we mill both of them, we prevent them from summoning them from the deck. They have to use Elf to bring it back, and we can grave shuffle it back into the deck. So it makes it very hard for the opponent to recur their key negates in Sprite. And this is one of the reasons I really like the Melfi sprite is because it's such a small engine, but so impactful, and you can still afford to play 2 carrot and 2 red, whereas if you splash like Live Twin or Runic or whatever else, you might be forced to play one of these, and it can be a little bit more tough. But the Runic variant, at least you have all the Runic spells, which is super beneficial because, you know, like Flashing Fire and stuff destroys and negates, and I forgot the negating one is, but you know, you have Slumber, you have Flashing Fire, you have all these other ones that basically do the job of the sprite cards as well. So yeah, we make a misplay. The Sharon ends up fusing for the Kit Kalos, and then the Havnus can't fuse because obviously it's back in the deck. So I've used 2 names and only got 1 fusion monster out of it, so that was a huge misplay. And then off of the Kit Kalos, we search Merly. So Merly is the only one we haven't used yet for fusion. Now we're going to have to do the mill 8, send the Kit Kalos, special summon the Merly, and off the mill 8, let's see what we get here. We get a Rhino and a Rhino. We can't activate them because we have no Tearlaments card in hand, and we get an Yugioh and a Sulik. So we're going to trigger Yugioh 1, Sulik 2, so we search for our monster first, and then the Yugioh will mill. Let's see what we get. We grab a Havnus, so we can play during the opponent's turn potentially, and then the Yugioh mill 5. That mills nothing for us because, again, we've already used Havnus, so that's not great. Now, on the opponent's side, we milled their Sprite Carrot, and we reveal that they are on Live Twin Sprite. So they have the Artifact Scythe combo where they pop their own Artifact Scythe and lock me out of the extra deck. But we've milled their Carrot and their Red, so they can't use Sprite, like Blue Sprite Starter, to bring them to the field. So now we're going to go ahead and link these off into Sprite Elf. And Sprite Elf is going to go ahead and bring back the Maxi. And, you know, we're going to have Merly engraved for next turn so we can bring it back to during our opponent's turn. So all we have really for interruptions is the opponent has to activate an effect on their field, trigger Havnus, mill 3, or Elf, bring back Merly, mill 3. So we can potentially mill 6 here, and we have the graveyard interruptions in the Keldo and Mudora. But aside from that, our field is very weak. I put this Maxi on board as a defensive option. The opponent draws, and they have the... or they top deck the Sunny Snitch, which is really good. It gets them a Live Twin card. And we know they have Jet and I think Starter in hand still. So we're going to go ahead and activate Merly, activate Elf to bring back Merly on the summon of the Live Twin because I don't want them to start going into the Live Twin links. And I know they have Jet in hand, right? So we're going to go ahead and see if we can perform an interruption here. The opponent is smart because by using the Jet, I believe I had to chain Merly here, so I couldn't chain Havnus to the Sprite Blue, which means I missed the timing to activate Havnus. So the opponent will have to activate another monster effect on field for me to be able to chain the Havnus, I believe. I'm not 100% sure. I don't remember what the sequence was like when I was actually going through the motion. But the opponent searches another Sprite Jet because, again, they have no other Sprite cards to search. They can't search a copy of itself in Sprite Blue, so they have to search for Jet because we milled their only Carrot and their only Red. So now they have 2 Sprite Jets in hand. They likely don't play Gamma Burst, so they probably only have Smashers left to use or to search out. And again, remember, we banished one of their blues as well. So they're on 16 cards, and we're on 13. We're actually potentially close to decking them out here, but the Aver Max is still a problem. So off of the Sharon here, we're going to put back and summon out Kaleido, because again, I want to spin back the Live Twin Frost here. The opponent summons Jet and searches most likely Smashers, and this is where we chain the Havnus. So again, we've used Sharon effect to summon the Kaleido, I believe. Yep, return the Sharon. And off of the opponent using... off of the opponent using Jet, we summon Havnus. The reason I chain a Shuffler here, I'll explain this, is because off of Havnus mill, I want to potentially mill good. So I end up putting back the 2 mill 5s and a Planet, which I shouldn't have really put back yet. But I'm like, yeah, I want Planet back in my deck. I won't mill it again. And sure enough, I do mill it again. And we mill Scream and Mudora off of the Havnus. So no fusion extension. So all I can really hope is that I'm at 5,000 life. I don't get OTK through this board. And I believe the opponent did bring Smashers to hand. Yeah, they brought Smashers off Jet. So they summon Elf. They attempt to target, I think, Red with Elf. And of course, we're going to shuffle that back with Mudora. This is our second shuffle. They're going to chain the Smashers. That's fine. It's going to get rid of the Kaleido. And yeah, we're in a bit of a rough spot. It does get rid of their Elf too, though, which is good. So we know the last card in hand is Jet, and they've already special summoned Jet this turn. I don't know if they used their normal summon. Yes, they did for the Live Twin card. Okay. So yeah, once again, we're in a pretty simplified game state. And I'm thinking to myself, I have to go for Zeus here. So I have to draw something that will get me into 2 level 4s. And I draw the Rhino, which is really good. I pitch Havness, which is a mistake because again, if I'm going for Zeus, I'm going to wipe my own board, which is going to wipe the Havness and Merly off field. I should have pitched Sharon because when I send these two cards on the field with the Zeus, it'll trigger both. Now I'll only be able to trigger the Merly. So second misplay, that kind of cost me there. So off the Havness, we're actually going to go into Mud Dragon, and I talk about this in my Tearlaments video deck list about why it's important to play Mud Dragon. This card is now the other level 4 that I need in order to make the Zodiac Chakanine. So Chakanine into Borbo, and then Borbo is going to be able to attack directly. It doesn't have to attack the Avermax. And then we're going to be able to go main phase 2 Zeus. We know that the Avermax, when it's sent, will trigger the returning of the Zeus, but it will trigger on the same chain as my Merly and my what should have been my Havness as well. So even after the Zeus gets spun back, it's totally fine because we're going to still be able to bring a Rukalos to field by putting back the Kit Kalos and the Merly. And if I would have kept the Rhino, I could have also brought Kit Kalos and then brought like trap card to hand, set trap card, and like won the game right there. So another huge misplay that cost me the game. The opponent again has Jet and one other card that they can't use, I guess. We draw into Yugioh. No point in summoning this because we can't go for game, so might as well just keep it in the hand. Past turn, we do have a special summon negate with the Rukalos. The opponent draws, and wow, they are playing Raigeki. Interesting. So they Raigeki, knowing that we would bring back the Rukalos here, and sure enough, we do. So we've used the effect of, this fusion summon card is sent to the graveyard, bring it back, and now they're going to normal summon the Sprite card, special summon Jet. They have nothing left in their deck to search, and then they're going to go into Sky Cavalry. So they're going for their own Zeus play. They attack, take 1,000, and I don't know if this is a misplay, because I'm pretty sure if you go Zeus and wipe the board here, maybe they didn't know this, Rukalos goes to grave, and then I can't bring it back. Because I already used the effect once this turn already, but it's no longer fusion summoned. It was special summoned from the graveyard, so I wouldn't be able to bring it back. So I don't know why they want to return to the deck rather than just go into Zeus and then just wipe the board. Or yeah, they can either wipe the board and get the Rukalos into graveyard permanently, or just keep the Zeus with 4 materials. Because now going into Downward, going into Zeus, they only have 3 materials on Zeus, which means 1 activation. What does this mean? It means that if I can get a Dragostapelia on field, I can play a game of chicken. Whoever activates first basically gets negated, right? If I try to activate Dragostapelia, they chain Zeus, wipe the field, and my Dragostapelia ends up not negating the Zeus. If they try to activate Zeus first, I chain Dragostapelia, and I negate the opponent's Zeus. So I'm in a little bit of a rough spot here because I only have 2,000 life, and I have to top deck something that allows me to play, and sure enough, I get a Mudora, which is super good because I'm able to pitch one of the mill 5s that I have in my hand. And at this point, the opponent's now on 11 cards. They have nothing really in the graveyard that's going to help them. But off our mills, we get Merly, Sharon, Rhino, which we can't use, and Yugioh. And so we're going to be activating some effects here. So we activate both the Tearlament names and the Yugioh. So you can see how much extra work I've had to put into this match just to try to play around the Avermax. Whereas if I was playing Underworld Goddess, I would have been over on turn 3. This match ends up getting to 10 turns as a result. So we're going to trigger the Yugioh in hand as well to special summon another body to board, trying to bait out the Zeus play. But the opponent opts not to do that. So because of that, the first fusion I make, of course, is going to now beat Dragostapelia. And now the second fusion, we're going to return and bring out the Kit Kalos. And that's going to allow us to search for a Sulik. So let's analyze this for a second. If the opponent opted to keep the 4 materials on Zeus, they still out the Rukalos. If they attempt to activate, we still get another mill 5. We probably don't activate all of our fusion names. And they, if they attempt to activate, we still end up bringing Dragostapelia on field and negating the final 2 materials that they try to trigger once we try to rebuild our board off of the first board wipe. So I don't think it made a difference in the end if they kept the 4 materials. We were still winning because we were able to draw good in the Mudora to trigger a bunch of effects off of the mill 5. And that's what Ishizu Tearlaments does. So now at this point, I'm going to search the Merly. I can't use the Kit Kalos effect because my field is full, but we are planning to Xyz summon, grab Sulik as well, and then off of the Kit Kalos, we grab Havness. So using the 2 mill 5s on board, we go into Time Thief, and this is a card I probably cut now for Underworld Goddess, but as of right now, there's nothing else to really go into, and I just pass turn knowing, because obviously, I can't beat over the Zeus right now, but I have 2 negates on board, so I'm not feeling too worried. We chain Time Thief, Redoer to try to take a card from the top of their deck. I don't know if they thought I was trying to banish it and save it, but they're going to chain Zeus, which means now I just chain Dragostapelia or Sulik and just completely negate the Zeus So you still have a 3000 body on board, but you no longer have your board wipe. And even if they did board wipe, our what's left in our deck in the 10 cards, we just have like good fusion names left in the deck. So this is where Tearlament becomes so powerful, because you know if this Kit Kalos gets sent, the 5 that I send are just going to be like all Tearlament names to trigger, because they're all returned to my deck. I just shuffle some stuff into my deck, shuffle the deck around, and whatever I mill is likely going to bring out 2 or 3 fusion monsters. So, you know, at this point in the game, this part of the grind game, I can thicken up my deck by shuffling things back into my deck, continue to mill your deck. You only have 4 cards left, which is why they, you know, Maxi is useless. They realize that they have no more resources to play with. This is another kind of thing that a lot of Ishizu Tearlament players don't realize, is that the mill 5s really cuts down the opponent's resources. You know, like you saw, their 1-ofs of Carrot and Red couldn't be used throughout the whole match because we put them in the graveyard, we interrupted their elf, we interrupted them all along the way, milling out their resources and you know, shuffling things back into the deck, preventing activations. So, or activations from resolving, I should say. So super strong. At this point, the opponent kind of knows it's over. All we need to do is, yeah, we draw a Rhino. We can make like Abyss Dweller, pump up the Rukalos that we're about to summon to 3,500, beat over the Zeus, go for game. The opponent knows it's over and they just end up resigning. But, you know, you could have saved yourself that long grind game if you just played Underworld Goddess. And so that's the moral of today's video.